The nature of evil, what Stoicism really teaches about darkness in others. It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Epictetus. We rarely use the word evil in our modern conversations. It sounds too ancient, too dramatic, like something from myths, not life. But if we're honest, most of us have felt it. Not in some supernatural form, but in a cold stare that made you feel small. In a calculated betrayal that shattered your trust. In the way someone can smile, and still enjoy your pain. Evil doesn't always show up as cruelty. Sometimes, it shows up as indifference to your suffering. And that's what makes it dangerous. High voltage sign emoji. Evil is not loud. It's subtle, strategic, empty of compassion. In Stoic philosophy, evil isn't a cartoonish villain. It's not horns and fire. It's not always violent. Instead, it's defined by a willful rejection of reason, virtue, and moral responsibility. It's when someone chooses manipulation over honesty, control over connection, destruction over integrity. Marcus Aurelius put it simply: the wrongdoer has done wrong to himself, the consequence of his own actions. Stoicism doesn't see evil as something external we must battle with swords. It sees it as corruption of the soul, something that begins inside a person and ripples outward, harming everyone it touches. But here's the most important Stoic truth: you are not responsible for someone else's darkness. You are only responsible for how you protect your light. Speech bubble emoji. Evil begins where reflection ends. Epictetus believed that the root of evil is not thinking, not reasoning, not pausing to ask, is this right? A truly evil person isn't just someone who makes mistakes. It's someone who no longer feels the weight of their impact, who repeats harm and then justifies it, who sees your vulnerability not as something to protect, but to exploit. The Stoics were clear: every human being is capable of choosing virtue, but not everyone wants to. Some people reject it entirely. And that rejection isn't your burden to carry, it's their battle with their own emptiness. Your job is not to fix them. Your job is to recognize the signs, hold your boundaries, and stay anchored in your own values. Ocean wave emoji. The most dangerous people are not the loudest, they're the ones who feel nothing. There's something chilling about encountering someone who simply does not care. Not about truth, not about consequences, not about who they hurt along the way. Stoicism teaches us to cultivate apatheia, inner calm, non-reactivity. But evil people twist that principle into something dark: emotional detachment with malicious intent. They weaponize calm to dominate. They speak with confidence, but never with compassion. They demand loyalty, but offer none in return. Don't be fooled by the charm. The Stoics remind us: look deeper. Look at actions, not words. Look at patterns, not apologies. A person's true nature isn't revealed in a moment, it's revealed in how they respond to discomfort, accountability, and your boundaries. Brain emoji. Evil is not just what they do, it's what they consistently justify. Here's the paradox: even people who do evil rarely believe they're evil. They rationalize. They call it tough love. They blame your sensitivity. They gaslight until you question your own memory. But Epictetus warns us: if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. This doesn't mean it's your fault. It means, wake up. Don't let your mind be reshaped by someone who's abandoned virtue. Stay aware. Stay grounded. Don't match their behavior, surpass it with clarity and self-respect. Because the true Stoic doesn't fight evil with more fire, they disarm it by refusing to descend to its level. Right magnifying glass emoji. So what do you do when you recognize evil? You protect your peace. You walk away without drama. You hold the line without hatred. You act, not to punish, but to preserve your own integrity. The Stoics never said you have to accept cruelty. They said, accept that cruelty exists, and choose not to carry it inside you. You weren't born to fix broken people who refuse to see their own cracks. You were born to become strong enough to walk away, and whole enough to not look back. Because when you learn to recognize evil clearly, without illusion or self-blame, you stop reacting. You start responding, like a calm, immovable mountain that refuses to be shaken by the storm. That's Stoic strength. That's the foundation. The first sign, they feel no remorse. If someone does wrong, the harm lies not in the action itself, but in the corruption of their character. Epictetus. There is a certain kind of person who does harm, and never looks back. They hurt you with their words, their actions, their silence. And when you finally gather the strength to name it, they say, "You're too sensitive. I didn't mean it like that. You should have known better." No apology, no pause, no trace of shame in their voice. Just deflection, justification, or worse, amusement. This is the first Stoic red flag, a lack of remorse. Not imperfection, not error, but a total absence of self-reflection. No entry sign emoji. Everyone makes mistakes. Evil people repeat them without guilt. Stoicism doesn't demand perfection. In fact, the Stoics were deeply humble about human nature. They knew we all stumble. We all get triggered. We all fall short. What mattered wasn't the mistake. It was what happened after. Did you reflect? Did you adjust? Did you take ownership? Seneca said, "A wrongdoer is often a man who has never been taught how to do right." But what happens when they've been taught? When you've explained the harm, gently, clearly, and they still choose to repeat it? What happens when someone looks you in the eyes, sees you're hurt, and feels nothing? That's no longer ignorance. That's a choice. That's a soul drifting away from reason, and into something darker. Speech bubble emoji. The non-apology is a mask for control. Evil doesn't always sound like screaming. Sometimes it sounds like this: "I'm sorry if you feel that way. I guess nothing I do is ever enough for you. Fine. Whatever. I won't say anything next time." These are not apologies. These are strategies to end the conversation, not to repair the damage. The Stoic response isn't to argue or plead. It's to observe. Ask yourself, does this person take responsibility when they cause harm? Do they acknowledge your reality, or twist it? Do they feel regret, or just annoyance that you noticed? You'll quickly see the difference between someone who slipped and someone who simply does not care. Brain emoji. Why remorse matters, even to a Stoic. A Stoic doesn't dwell on guilt, but a true Stoic also doesn't ignore their impact. Remorse, when real, is a sign of virtue. It means the soul still hears the voice of reason. It means the heart is still open enough to feel the weight of another person's pain. But the person who lacks that, who can watch someone cry, and still feel righteous or amused, that's not strength. That's spiritual vacancy. And the more you explain your pain to them, the more power you give away. Because Stoicism teaches us, what matters most is not being understood, but being in alignment with your own values. You don't need them to feel sorry in order to protect yourself. You only need to recognize, this person has no intention of changing. And that's enough. Shield emoji. The cost of staying near someone without remorse. Let's be honest, staying in the presence of someone who repeatedly hurts you and shows no remorse does something to your spirit. You begin to question your own reality. You lower your standards just to keep the peace. You become someone you don't recognize, quiet, cautious, always bracing for impact. But Epictetus warned us, don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. You cannot embody peace while walking through a battlefield every day. You cannot grow in self-respect while begging someone to see your worth. If they feel no remorse, you don't need revenge. You don't even need a dramatic exit. You just need to choose your freedom over familiarity. Seedling emoji. What a Stoic does instead. A Stoic sees clearly, feels deeply, but acts deliberately. So what do you do when someone shows no remorse? You stop talking and start walking. You protect your energy like a sacred flame. You rebuild your identity around truth, not reaction. And in that silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence of clarity, you begin to heal. The second sign, they use silence, guilt, and control as weapons, and call it love. The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. Marcus Aurelius. Some people hurt you openly. They raise their voice. They insult you. They break things. And then there are others, the ones who never raise their voice. never lose their temper, but somehow still leave you feeling small, guilty, anxious, and afraid. They don't strike, they withdraw. They don't confront, they manipulate. They don't explode, they disappear into cold silence. And they'll call it love. They'll say, I'm just giving you space. Or, you always take everything the wrong way. Or worse, you made me act this way. This is the second Stoic truth. Some people use emotional detachment not as a strength, but as a strategy. They use silence not for clarity, but for control. And Stoicism gives us the tools to see through the act, and take our power back. Brain emoji. True Stoic calm is built on virtue, not power plays. The Stoics valued self-control deeply. They believed in the ability to stay centered, even when life gets hard. But let's be clear, Stoic calm is active. It's grounded in justice, empathy, and self-awareness. It's not coldness. It's not emotional absence. It's not punishing others with silence or withdrawal. That's not wisdom. That's weaponized stillness. And it's one of the most common traits of people who manipulate. When someone consistently shuts down, withholds, or disappears the moment you express a need or boundary, they aren't practicing peace. They're practicing emotional dominance. They make you doubt your tone. They make you question if you're too much. They turn your longing for closeness into a problem you now feel guilty for having. That's not love. That's psychological warfare. Bomb emoji. Guilt is their favorite tool, especially when you begin to see clearly. Have you ever tried to express how something hurt you, only to end up apologizing, or brought up a valid concern, and somehow they flipped it, and now you feel like the bad guy? That's not an accident. That's a tactic. Guilt is the perfect way to control someone without appearing abusive. It keeps you off balance, always trying to make things right, even when you didn't do anything wrong. Epictetus warned us, people are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. Manipulators know this. They shape how you see the situation, so that you become the villain in your own story. They rewrite reality, not with force, but with silence, subtlety, and suggestion. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to hear your own truth. Mirror emoji. Stoic clarity begins with this: if it feels like control, it isn't love. A person who loves you will listen, even if it's uncomfortable. They'll stay present, even when you disagree. They won't vanish into silence just to make you suffer. True Stoic strength isn't afraid of emotion, it welcomes emotion, but channels it wisely. It doesn't punish. It doesn't guilt. It doesn't gaslight. If someone's calm feels more like tension than safety, trust that feeling. The Stoic approach is to observe with reason. Is this person creating space for dialogue, or shutting it down? Does their silence feel respectful, or retaliatory? Are you always the one chasing clarity, while they stay distant and vague? If so, you're not in a relationship. You're in a power imbalance. And the longer you stay, the smaller your voice becomes. Recycle emoji. How to break free without drama. Stoicism teaches us not just to endure, but to discern. You don't need to match their silence. You don't need to scream to be heard. You only need to see clearly, and then act from strength. Here's how: name the pattern. Write it down. See it for what it is. Stop chasing clarity from someone who thrives on confusion. Speak once, calmly, then let go. Your peace is not a negotiation. Rebuild your internal compass. Journal. Reflect. And remember your values. Because once you start valuing your own peace more than their approval, the spell breaks. You don't beg. You don't react. You simply walk away without the need for permission or revenge. A Stoic is not concerned with what others say or do, only with who they choose to be. Marcus Aurelius. The third sign: they twist reality, gaslighting and manipulation. If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. For I seek the truth, which never harmed anyone. The harm is in clinging to false opinion. Marcus Aurelius. Truth is sacred. It's the foundation of sanity, the compass that keeps us steady in a chaotic world. But what happens when someone plays with that compass? What happens when they slowly rewrite your reality, make you question your memory, your instincts, even your sense of self. That's not miscommunication. That's not a difference of perspective. That's gaslighting, the systematic distortion of your inner truth. And it's the third Stoic sign of evil, the person who manipulates reality so you begin to doubt your own mind. Brain emoji. Gaslighting is the corruption of logos. In Stoicism, logos is the divine principle of reason, logic, and truth. To live virtuously, a Stoic must live in alignment with logos, with what is real, not with what feels good, or convenient, or beneficial. That's why Stoics prize truth over comfort, even when it was painful. But manipulators? They do the opposite. They value control over truth. They twist logic to serve their narrative. They exploit your trust in reason, and slowly make you doubt your grip on it. They'll say things like, "That never happened. You're remembering it wrong. You always overreact. Don't be so dramatic." And over time, their certainty chips away at your clarity. You start apologizing for things you never did. You start filtering your words, second-guessing your tone, shrinking your presence, until one day, you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the person staring back. Left magnifying glass emoji. Stoicism teaches you to guard your mind fiercely. Epictetus reminds us, your mind is your own. Guard it like a fortress. Gaslighting isn't just confusing, it's spiritual violence, because it attacks the one thing Stoics value above all else, inner sovereignty. The manipulator wants you to become so disoriented that you hand over your judgment and rely on theirs instead. That's the goal. Not love, not connection, but psychological dependence. And if you don't recognize it early, you'll find yourself trapped in a web of falsehoods, spun so tightly that even your pain feels like proof you're the problem. No entry sign emoji. When clarity feels like conflict. One of the most brutal parts of dealing with a manipulator is this: the moment you seek clarity, they label you as difficult. The moment you ask for honesty, they say you're attacking them. The moment you name the truth, they punish you with silence, mockery, or rage. It's a trap, because you want peace, not conflict. So you stay quiet. You stay agreeable. You hope they'll change. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. The truth is more important than your comfort. And if someone cannot sit in truth, if they must always spin, deflect, or dominate the narrative, then no amount of kindness, patience, or love will heal them. Because it's not confusion, it's strategy. Shield emoji. The Stoic response to gaslighting. The Stoic doesn't scream, doesn't beg, doesn't try to prove their version of reality. The Stoic observes, grounds, and returns to the truth, quietly, consistently, firmly. Here's how to do it. Write down what happened. Create an objective timeline. Keep records. Reclaim your own narrative. Speak with clarity, not emotion. The manipulator thrives on drama, don't feed them. Trust your first response. If something felt wrong, it was. Your gut speaks before logic kicks in. Don't over-explain. Truth needs no defense. The more you argue, the more they twist. Exit with grace, not rage. Walk away when clarity becomes impossible. Not to punish them, but to protect you. Seedling emoji. Rebuilding yourself after the fog. Escaping manipulation isn't just an exit, it's a rebuilding. Because truth isn't just something you see, it's something you live. Every time you choose to trust your perception, speak clearly, and act from virtue, you repair the damage. And day by day, you return to yourself. You begin to remember, I'm not crazy. I'm not too sensitive. I'm not the villain in their story. You are simply someone who values truth. And that made you dangerous to someone who didn't. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. The fourth and fifth signs, they make you doubt yourself. And they can't truly love. Just keep in mind, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Epictetus. You didn't wake up one day feeling lost. It happened slowly. You stopped speaking up. You stopped trusting your gut. You second-guessed your tone, your memory, your worth. And one day, you caught yourself whispering apologies you didn't owe. and wondering how you became so small. You weren't always this way. You were made this way, by someone who fed you doubt disguised as love. And that's the fourth Stoic truth. Evil doesn't just harm you. It erodes your trust in yourself. Brain emoji. Doubt is not humility, it's a weapon when used against you. Stoicism values humility. A Stoic questions their ego, examines their motives, asks, could I be wrong? But self-inquiry is different from self-sabotage. When someone constantly makes you feel like you misunderstood again, you're overthinking. You need to fix everything. You start living in defense mode. You trade intuition for caution. You forget that your thoughts, your instincts, your emotions are valid. That's not your fault. That's the byproduct of manipulation, of slow, steady erosion. But Stoicism calls you back to reason. The chief task in life is simply this, to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Epictetus. Here's the truth, their opinion is external. Your self-trust is internal. And the moment you remember that, you begin to reclaim it. Broken heart emoji. Final sign, they do not have the capacity for real love. This one is hard. Maybe the hardest. Because we want to believe that everyone is capable of love. That beneath the anger, the silence, the gaslighting, there's a wounded person who just needs more kindness. That if we stay, show patience, prove our loyalty, they'll change. But sometimes, they don't. Not because they're beyond healing, but because they've chosen not to try. And this is the final Stoic truth. Real love requires self-awareness, virtue, and responsibility. A person who refuses to reflect, justifies harm, demands your trust but never earns it, twists your words, guilt trips, manipulates, controls, is not loving you. They're using you to fill a void they refuse to face themselves. Marcus Aurelius said, when you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love. Love is a privilege, a responsibility, a reflection of character. If someone cannot love with kindness, clarity, and respect, if they call harm love and expect you to accept it, they are not loving you. They are only loving the control they have over you. And staying in that kind of dynamic doesn't make you loyal. It makes you lost. Shield emoji. What the Stoic does at the end. So, what does the Stoic do when they've seen all the signs? They don't explode. They don't curse. They don't beg for an apology that will never come. They do something far more powerful. They choose themselves, without guilt, without drama, without fear. They remember, virtue is internal. Peace is a practice. Freedom begins the moment you stop needing others to validate your worth. The Stoic walks away not to punish the other, but to protect the truth of who they are becoming. They rebuild their self-trust. They stay close to reason. They surround themselves with people who speak clearly, love calmly, and live with alignment. And in doing so, they heal. Sunrise over mountains emoji. Closing reflection. Your soul wasn't meant to live in the dark. If you've encountered someone like this, if you've loved someone like this, you're not weak. You're not broken. You're not naive. You're human. You tried. You gave your heart. And that shows your depth, not your failure. But now, it's time to return to yourself. Let Stoic wisdom be your lantern. Truth over comfort, clarity over confusion, boundaries over people-pleasing, integrity over control, inner peace over external validation. You were not made to live in fear. You were not made to doubt your voice. You were not made to chase someone else's version of love. You were made to stand in truth, calmly, firmly, unshaken. So take a breath, step out of the fog, and walk toward the kind of life that doesn't demand you lose yourself in order to be loved. Because the person who honors your mind, respects your heart, and meets you with honesty, won't twist your truth. They'll recognize it. They'll rise to meet it. And most importantly, they'll never make you feel like you have to earn what should be freely given. The rebuilding, how to heal from evil without becoming bitter. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, Marcus Aurelius. You've seen the darkness. You've stood in the storm, the manipulation, the silence, the slow gaslighting that made you question your worth. And now, you're out. But now comes the real question. How do you heal? Without hardening? How do you move forward with wisdom, but not suspicion? With strength, but not bitterness? Because here's what no one tells you. Walking away is the easy part. Reclaiming your peace is the real journey. And if you don't consciously rebuild yourself, the echoes of evil will haunt your relationships, your self-image, your future. This is where Stoicism becomes not just powerful, but personal. Seedling emoji. Evil doesn't just wound, it plants poisonous seeds. After you leave, their words linger. The self-doubt doesn't disappear. You replay conversations. You wonder if you really were overreacting. You flinch at kindness. You tighten up when someone gets too close. This is the shadow they leave behind. Not bruises, but beliefs. That your feelings are too much. That love is something you must earn. That silence is normal. That speaking up is dangerous. You carry these like armor. But the tragedy is, this armor also blocks the very things your soul longs for: intimacy, freedom, connection, clarity. To heal, you must become aware of these invisible scars. Epictetus put it simply, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them. Evil planted the judgments. Your task now is to pull them out by the root. Left magnifying glass emoji. Step 1, name the belief. Challenge the belief. Every time you find yourself shrinking, hesitating, fearing kindness, pause. Ask yourself, whose voice is that in my head? Is this fear based on present reality, or past pain? What's the truth here? What's within my control? When you feel afraid to speak up, remind yourself, virtue lies in honesty, not in silence. When you feel the need to apologize for having needs, say, my boundaries are an act of self-respect, not rejection of others. When you feel yourself expecting betrayal, remember, this person is not the past. I am not powerless. I see clearly now. Healing through Stoicism doesn't mean suppressing your wounds. It means framing them with clarity, and choosing how to respond. This is what separates pain from purpose. Shield emoji. Step 2, rebuild your inner fortress. In the aftermath of a toxic relationship, your mind becomes fragile. Your identity, once rooted in virtue and self-respect, has been shaken. Now is the time to return home. Like the Stoics, you must rebuild your inner citadel, a mental fortress built not on ego, but on truth. Start small. Daily journaling. What did I feel today? Why? Did I act from fear or reason? Morning affirmations. I am the guardian of my mind. I allow in only what aligns with my values. Evening reflection. Did I hold my center today? Where did I compromise myself? What did I learn? These are not rituals of comfort. They are rituals of power. Every moment you choose reason over reaction, clarity over confusion, virtue over validation, you strengthen your soul. Light bulb emoji. Step 3, practice loving without losing yourself. This is the hardest part, learning to love again, without abandoning yourself. The Stoics never said don't love. They said, love without attachment to outcome. Love with presence, not possession. Love with clarity, not dependency. Love with boundaries, not sacrifice. Here's the Stoic truth. If love demands you lose yourself, it's not love, it's submission. If it requires silence, it's not peace, it's control. If it triggers fear, it's not intimacy, it's instability. So practice this. Speak even when your voice shakes. Walk away when you're being emotionally drained, without explaining why. Celebrate when someone respects your boundary, and notice the difference from before. You are no longer a person waiting to be rescued or understood. You are a builder, a guardian, of your own life philosophy. Sun emoji. What comes after evil? The answer is not revenge, not resentment, not even understanding. The answer is self-reclamation. To walk out of a toxic past and say, I see what you did, but I will not become you. I will remain open, but I will never be blind again. I forgive, not for your sake, but so your poison doesn't live inside me. This is the Stoic response to evil. Not rage, not retreat, but a quiet, deliberate return to truth. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, Marcus Aurelius. You've already survived them. Now, it's time to thrive beyond them.